I had the idea to make a video about the hero's journey in the zodiacal wheel, essentially the sun's path around the 12 zodiac signs, and how the seasonal progressions correlate with the seasons of the human life and the different phases of the human life. So you could call it the hero's journey, or you could, I'm not necessarily using that archetypal framework, but it sounds good in the title. So I'll just say the phases of human life and development as it is in harmony with the natural cycles of the seasons. So I don't know if this will be a particular long video, depending on how much I ramble here, but I'm just going to go through the 12 signs and how they're reflected in the stages of life. So of course we begin with Aries. It's the beginning of the zodiacal year. And just like a seed is the beginning of new plants, the seed represents potential, just pure potential in like an infant or even the procreative process, right? It's mating season. Aries is just enthusiasm for life and action, limitless potential, kind of a naivety, right? We just want to act and express, but there's no sense of real identity, or we don't know who we are. We're just a baby. So the seed of potential that wants to express in Aries. But in order for a seed to fulfill its purpose, the first step, it needs to go into the soil. It needs to start growing. It needs nourishment. So we move into Taurus, first earth sign. And there's always this relationship between the fire signs and the earth signs. And the fire has the inspiration and the earth has the manifestation of the inspiration. So this is the first example of that. The seed goes into the soil of Taurus. It finds nourishment in its immediate environment. I mean, ideally in childhood, you're nourished, right? Hopefully you have loving parents and an environment that can help you to grow and begin your path. But of course, no garden is perfectly tilled and has perfect conditions. The seed must learn to navigate the soil, right? So in Taurus, eventually we start, maybe by the end of Taurus, getting the plant up through the surface of the soil and get the first sprouts coming out of the ground. And we're able to really start, maybe, as far as human development, start being able to perceive the world using our minds. We start learning how to speak. We enter into Gemini. We're curious. We want to know what everything is called. How do we interact with the world? Just curiosity. And that can get us into trouble too, of course, right? Toddlers can be overly enthusiastic in their learning process. So of course, the curious Gemini is what we think of. Learning and troublemaking in that phase of life. So then, as we grow, we're then, capable of interacting in the world a bit more. And, as young children, eventually we go to school. We go to preschool and school and into grade school, and we live within our families, within the context of our kind of the cocoon of our family. And ideally, this kind of tight-knit childhood cocoon is able to nourish and support us, ideally. And of course, everybody has their different experiences and nothing is ever perfect. But that's the intention of this phase of life. So we enter into Cancer, which offers that kind of nourishing cocoon of our childhood. And we learn our roles within our families, that you're the child, maybe you have siblings, your parents, your home. You're still kind of just part of this, just as the seed back in Aries just was. There's no real distinction. There's just potential to who you are. You don't really know who you are yet. There's no real sense of identity. But you fit into, maybe your friend group at school. You listen to your teachers, you listen to your parents, depending on how much you resist that. And yeah, you're sheltered. And you continue to grow and learn about the world. Now, once you start exiting childhood and adolescence in your teenage years, in that process, you start looking for an identity. You begin wanting to explore what makes you different. You can see, okay, this is how I fit in with my family and all of these childhood experiences. You've been able to observe your parents and your teachers and so forth, and you start thinking, well, what makes me different? What makes me unique? And we enter into Leo, the search for identity, figuring out who you are. And this goes, well into early adulthood. And of course, all these phases can come and go in different elements all the way through our lives. But as far as following the natural progression of the signs through the seasons, they go in this order. So we explore, we ask ourselves questions about, well, what am I naturally good at? What do I enjoy doing? What excites me? What are the things that, are unique to me, that you want to express? So you explore that, and ideally you find some answers there. You find some patterns in your life that bring you joy, activities that you enjoy doing, and you start learning to express those things. And you find a way to fit in. So the thing is, though, we're back, this is, again, fire, and we're going to transition into the next earth sign, which is Virgo. So just like the seed of Aries needed the soil of Taurus, the desire to find identity and uniqueness in Leo now needs to actually do the work to manifest that identity into the world. Needs to learn the skills to be the person you want to be in Virgo. Virgo asks to humble yourself, to actually do the dirty work, right? And learn and fail and have discipline to figure out what it is that you need to figure out in order to be the person you want to become. Right? So it has this very humbling effect on the Leo's desire for identity and uniqueness. And in order to fulfill that, to learn those skills. So maybe it's, oftentimes you go to college or trade school or something like that, you figure out what it is that you want to do. Hopefully you can find something that's, can be a difficult thing. Maybe you want to be an artist or a writer, whatever it is that you feel called to, and build an identity around. And you need to learn the skills that allow you to actually do that and be of service. So Virgo is all about being of service to others and being practical. How can I take this inspiration and make it into something that is of use to other people in the world? How can I be good? How can I master my craft? Your craft, being a craftsman, is a very Virgoan term. So if we get through all of, the first 6 signs, the first half, we get to this place after Virgo where we know who we are. And we can express it in the world. We have the skills to actually interdependently now relate with the world. It's like I know what I'm good at, I know what I like, and I know how to express that, and I have skills that can be of service in expressing that to others. And therefore, I can start interacting with others in an interdependent way. It's like, hey, I have this thing that I can offer. It's not just inspiration, it's inspiration with a means of manifesting it in the world that I can share. And then when you share, you can essentially engage with exchange, energetic exchange with other people. Hey, I have this to offer you. And then they give you things in return, and you can sustain yourself. I want to say interdependently. Nobody is completely self-sufficient, but you can kind of be what's called, what an adult is supposed to be. Somebody who kind of knows what they are, they have an identity, and they have something to offer in a way that they can productively engage with the world. So the next step is, now that you know who you are and you have something to offer in that sense, in a worldly sense, you can engage in relationships with others. You can find others who actually have a similar identity, or an identity that that matches with your own in a way that is mutually beneficial. So before, we're born into a family, we don't really choose. We go to school usually based on just where we live, and whoever lives around there, those are the kids you know. So now we can start choosing our social relationships based on having an identity that we've kind of developed, and we can kind of build our tribe. We can choose our friends. We can choose our romantic partnerships. And as you kind of have that integrity in knowing who you are, you can attract people who are in alignment with that, versus not knowing who you are. You end up in relationships that aren't really in alignment because you didn't even know who you were. And sometimes that can help you figure out who you're not, right? But if we are able to follow this progression as the seasons do in our own lives, we can kind of go in the right order in a way that can be a bit more seamless. Of course, that's never how life pans out, but it's a helpful framework to think about. So we enter into Libra, the other. And since we know who we are, Libra is like a mirror also. Relationships are a mirror where we can recognize ourselves, because we know ourselves. We know our identity, at least. I don't want to say we know our spiritual, higher self. It's more about like our ego identity that Leo kind of represents. We've achieved that. It's that type of self-knowledge. We can recognize that in other people as well. And we can start, now we're not doing it alone. We're not doing life alone anymore. We can have social connections, and we can have partnerships, business partnerships, whatever it is, where we can start utilizing teamwork to further enhance what we can offer to the world. And as these relationships deepen, for example, then we start letting go of our selfish mode of living that is usually kind of at the forefront of the first part of our lives. In childhood, you're the star of the show. The parents are all about the child. And then as you get older and you're trying to, learn who you are, and you want to, it's not necessarily bad to develop the ego so that you can then have an identity, so then you can then offer something into the world, so then you can give back, right? So that there's a purpose of having this like selfishness in the early part of your life. But then once we get into Libra, then now other people matter. We're engaged in relationships of our own choosing that now involve kind of this mutual give and take, right? So as those relationships deepen, we need to surrender to a more selfless mode of being. So when we enter into Scorpio now, Scorpio is about stripping away what is no longer in service, doing the painful, sometimes painful or uncomfortable inner work that is required to do away with what is no longer necessary, whether that be selfish, self-centered, ways of being and thinking and behaving that maybe, that kind of served us in becoming who we are, right? Achieving our identity and our role of being interdependently self-sufficient in the world. Now we can kind of let go of that and be like, what can I do for the other people? How do I put my wants and desires on the back burner here? Not suppressing, but taking a step back there so that you can then serve the people you care about in your life and your relationships. Perhaps if you have entered into a committed romantic relationship at this point, maybe you're going to have children. Once you have children, you're certainly no longer the star of the show. You have to sacrifice. You have to clean the slate of the things that got you where you are at this point that you no longer need and that are no longer helpful. So that's what Scorpio is very good at, kind of cleaning the slate for the next phase of life here. And maybe I'll say one more thing about relationships. As far as Libra, this is really about the committed. It's marriage, right? That phase. Like you're starting to build a family. You're prepared to do that at this point. Versus, because there's an association between Libra and the 7th house, much as the 5th house also has an aspect with relationships in Leo, right? Leo in the 5th house. But those relationships associated with the 5th house are more about the egos of the parties involved, right? They're not committed. It's about learning, I'm learning who I am, and you're learning who you are, and this relationship can help in that. It's like dating less of a less committed nature, where Libra is commitment to the other, the reflection of yourself, building something in your life together, like true partnership. And then Scorpio, of course, is now this relationship is deep. And of course, no amount of individual psychoanalysis, inner work can really prepare a person for what a truly committed, deep relationship with another person is going to bring up, especially that mirroring capacity. So the Scorpio, again, is going to bring all the traumas from, the previous water sign, perhaps, like your childhood and Cancer, maybe areas where you weren't nourished, where you weren't protected. Those things come back to the surface now in adulthood for you to confront and kind of purge. Transmute would be a better term. So that you can then have the strength to build something larger in your life. It's like, okay, sure, I've learned how to navigate the world at this point. You've built an identity and you have skills that are of value to others. You can support meaningful and contribute to meaningful relationships. And now you're in a place of strength. If all these things are fulfilled, which they never perfectly are, of course. But now we can build ourselves something larger in our life. We can set our sights on a higher purpose. And that's what Sagittarius asks. What is our vision? Now that we are at a place of greater wisdom, where life isn't just about ourselves and our ability to navigate the world and being a unique individual, it's all those things that we learned, but we've let go of the nonsensical trauma responses and maybe egotistical, selfish impulses. We let go of that stuff in Scorpio. And now, from a place of more greater lucidity and wisdom, Sagittarius asks, well, what is our grand vision? What do we want to offer the world? What can we build? What can we contribute to? With the help of, interdependent partnership with others, what's the vision? What do we want to teach? What do we want to provide? What do we want to create? So again, as I mentioned at the beginning, now we're at the next fire sign, which is always inspiration, spirit. And followed by the earth sign of Capricorn is, okay, you have your vision, but let's build it. Let's bring the heaven to earth, bring spirit to earth. And of course, Capricorn requires the discipline and the persistence and the fortitude to climb that mountain, to also formulate the architecture of the plan, and to build it, to build your highest purpose in the world, to bring heaven to earth. And, to the extent that you climb that mountain and you do build it. What's the saying in the baseball movie from like the 80s or 90s? It was Field of Dreams. If you build it, they will come. So if you build it, then they will come. They built the baseball field and the cornfield, and all the baseball players came. So in this sense, if Capricorn, if you take the vision of Sagittarius and manifest it into the world in Capricorn, then they will come. Life will meet you. Now you have something that you are offering the world, something higher. It's almost like you build a house, then you live in the house. Then you figure out how to go about living in the house. What is each room used for? How do you what's your cleaning schedule of the house? How do you maintain the house? How does everybody live in a way that is mutually beneficial to everybody else in that house? So we enter into Aquarius, which is about the system, actually living in what you have built, and being able to not just get stuck in some type of structured way of being. It's like, oh, we built it this way and this must be the way it is. No, now it's living in harmony in our society with other people, with our family, with our society, with our communities, in a way that is constantly attuned to how can this be improved? How can we innovate? What is the best way to live? How can we improve the world in a way that leaves it better for the next generation? So Aquarius, in many ways, is the pinnacle of our worldly achievements. We've offered everything we can. And now we're in our old age, and, something in our society that's certainly lacking in our modern society is the reverence for elders, which throughout time was, the backbone of society in many ways, like reverence for our elders. That's where they were the leaders of our community. They were the ones who were wise, who would go to for advice. So Pisces kind of represents the elders, because here you are, you've achieved the full circuit here. And Pisces asks, well, what is of sustaining value? What have we learned? What have we learned? Spiritually, morally, the stuff that we take with us. The gold, right, that gets alchemized, right, through the entire process of life. What is the real value that we can pull out of all these experiences, all these accomplishments and failures, and this entire growth process? You know, it started as the seed, now we're the full, strong oak that is tied to an entire ecosystem of life in the forest. What is it that is of value, that we can take, that we can pass along? What is the wisdom? Pisces wants to know what the wisdom is. And once we synthesize that wisdom in Pisces, we can let go of everything, of our identity, of our accomplishments. The entire house that we built will dissolve, but we'll take that crystallized and eternal truth that we learned and instill that into a new seed to continue the cycle onward. So anyway, this was kind of an off the cuff little exploration of the cycle of life. Maybe I'll call it the cycle of life rather than the hero's journey, because the hero's journey has some specific archetypal aspects to it. So hopefully that was maybe helpful in meditating on the different natures of the signs and how they relate to each other and the natural world. So thanks for stopping by. I'll see you in the next one.